Welcome to Forsaken by Shadows, a production of stories by Sarah Danielle. After a long and restful summer, I am delighted to be returning to the production of this dark tale of redemption, healing, and of course, true love. There's still a long road ahead of Risman and Mazira, and I hope you'll continue to follow along with us as we journey together. But before we return to the recesses of the Underdark, I wanted to take a moment to summarize the story thus far. A lot was covered in Part 1, 17 years to be exact, from Mazira's childhood nightmare to her unexpected escape into freedom. So gather around with me and listen as Mazira shares her story. My name is Mazira, but for a long time I went by Kitty. I was only 8 years old when dark elves, known as drow, raided the camp of traveling minstrels my family lived with and slaughtered everyone I knew and loved. By some women fancy, the leader of these raiders, Telorial Tyr, decided to spare my life, not out of kindness, but out of a darker desire to tease out my misery for as long as possible. I became a slave to him and his tyrannical family, one of the leading noble houses of Menzoberranzan, the underground city of the Drow. If you are not familiar with Drow, I pray you never become so. They are a race of elves wholly devoted to the evil deity Lolth, goddess of spiders and chaos. She thrives on blood and treachery, encouraging her followers to war against each other. Her favor goes to the most dastardly of matron mothers, the vicious women who lead their houses to glory or ruin. But there's one thing all Drow can unite together on. They hate the elves of the surface, of which 3/4 of my blood hails. For 3 years I lived in constant fear and dread of what each day would bring. The hours were long and filled with hard work and torture, as I was considered less than an animal to my captors. They worshipped through my despair. They offered my blood and tears as their sacrifice to the Spider Queen. Then one day, things changed. I met a boy in the most unlikely of circumstances. I was cleaning in the chapel of Lolth when I heard the sound of someone crying. Curiosity led me to investigate, and to my horror, I discovered Risman Tyr, the younger brother of Telorial, hiding in an alcove. He was only 11, the same age as me, but he was the son of Matron Zadel, Queen of House Tyr. Yet he had been whipped and beaten, and had come to the alcove to hide his tears. And I, a fairy elf, had just discovered him. But I had pity on him, the son who was treated as a slave, so I offered to use the balm of healing I carried on his wounds to ease his suffering. Unfortunately, he thought I had stolen the balm. He didn't believe Telorial had given it to me for convenience sake, so I could get on with my work without having to be slowed down by my pains. He took the balm from me in a fit of rage, and I was so scared I ran away. But a few days later, Telorial found me limping and demanded to know why I had not used my balm. I lied to him and told him I lost it. Risman happened to be there at the time and realized that he had, in fact, taken from me what was actually given. Later, when Telorial was away, Risman snuck in to see me. He was a drow, and I was afraid, but oddly enough, he didn't act like any drow I had ever met. True, he grew angry and raised his voice, but he never hit me like the others. He only came to apologize. To apologize. I didn't know what to think. He asked me why I lied and didn't tell Telorial he had taken the balm from me. I was forced to confess that I felt pity, and when that made him angry, I was sure he would strike me then. I asked for mercy. Poor Risman had never heard the word mercy before, so I had to explain it, which led to more words I needed to define, such as kindness. Eventually he left me, but not before he healed the spider bites that were causing my limp. What I didn't know then was that my words had made him curious. Risman couldn't stop thinking about me, or the words mercy and kindness, and how good he had felt when he healed my wounds. He tried to practice kindness for his elder sister, Mindra, by cleaning up her office that she had trashed in a rage. Unfortunately, Mindra regarded his act of foresight as rebellion, signs that a lowly male child in a female-run society was taking initiative when he ought to have been taking orders. When Risman confessed to trying kindness, she saw weakness in him. Mindra beat him fiercely and left him to his misery. He ran off again, back to the alcove where we had met, and little did I know, he believed I had enchanted him. He thought the only reason he couldn't cease to think of me and my infectious kindness was because I had cast a spell on him, and his only hope of breaking free was to kill me. If I had known that, I might not have done what I did next. I found Risman in the alcove again, and was possessed by uncharacteristic boldness. I offered him comfort, though he lashed out at me with his words. I took the balm and healed his wounds, and though I could have died for it, I sang to him, like my mama used to sing when I was scared or hurt. To make matters worse, I even gave him a hug. That was the start of many years of secret friendship. Risman was possessed by my song, and came to me every chance he got to hear more music. I began to teach him more things: love, kindness, family. I had my work cut out for me, and he mostly scoffed at every story of the surface I told him. But he'd become like a friend to me. More than that, he grew to be someone I deeply loved, though I wouldn't realize that until much later. As the years went on, his hostility softened towards me, and he treated me as an equal. I began to forget that he was a drow. I even intervened to save him from Teloriel the night of his 16th birthday, when he got caught sneaking in to see me. He had come to tell me his position had been elevated, that the slavery that marked his early life had come to an end, and he was finally being recognized as a real son of the family. He even got what he'd always wanted, a chance to train with the weapons master of House Tyr and serve the family as a warrior. But I wasn't conscious when he arrived. Teloriel was furious that his little brother was now his competition for favor. He took his fury out on me, and little did Risman know, Teloriel was coming back to drench me in a healing potion when he found Risman kneeling over my broken body. Risman only escaped certain doom because I reminded Teloriel his mother had work for him. I took a beating for it, but then Teloriel left me and Risman, and we found ourselves somewhere safer in the house to meet. A broom closet that hadn't been used in decades. It became our sanctuary. Despite my pain, I was proud of myself for protecting my only friend. My only regret that night was that Risman had seen my scar, the image of a spider that had been dripped onto my back with acid. But my regrets would eventually catch up to me. Just 4 years later, Risman called me from my work and led me into an empty ritual room. I thought it was strange, since he never interacted with me during the day where people might see and wonder. But he had to talk to me. He had been ordered to Melee Mag there, the academy that trained Menzo Berenson's elite warriors. That was when I found out that Risman had believed, all this time, that I had him enchanted. He really, honestly believed he only liked me because I bewitched him. It was the only way he knew how to reconcile the teachings of his family about how evil and wicked fairies were with how he felt towards me. Feelings that he made shockingly clear when he advanced upon me, believing I must reciprocate if I went through the trouble of bewitching him in the first place. Thankfully, nothing irrevocable happened. Though he put his hands on me in ways I did not invite, his words betrayed him. He whispered that he loved me. Despite my shock and fear, those words incited a black rage within me. I shoved him away and informed him it wasn't possible that he loved me, because drow aren't capable of love. But I humiliated him, and in his hurt and rejection he struck me with the back of his hand, then fled in horror at what he'd done. I didn't see Rizman again for 5 years. After he left, I broke down into sobs. Teloriel found me and wanted to know what Rizman had done, but I refused to tell him anything. I had realized that I loved a drow, and that drow turned out to be no different from every other monster I served. In my sorrow, I had given up. I told Teloriel to kill me, because I would never give him the satisfaction of my screams again. When I woke next, I was trapped in the broom closet Rizman and I had claimed as her own. Teloriel visited me many times, endeavoring to garner any response but apathy from me. He thrived off my fear and agony, but I no longer feared anything. After several days, however, he found the one thing that could break through my new shell of apathy. He told me he was going to kill me, but as he raised his blade to strike, he told me also he would be acquiring a new slave from the surface to replace me. I couldn't stand the thought of another little girl going through what I had went through, so to my shame, I begged his forgiveness. I promised to play my part properly, and things went back to the way it was. Those years without Rizman were the darkest in my life. I'm sure I never would have survived the full 10 years that he was supposed to be away at Melee Mag there. But in his 5th year of schooling, one of the other students in his class convinced the instructors that they should invite Teloriel to present his pet fairy to the class. Teloriel was more than happy to show me off, to boast of his victories in surface raiding. While visiting the academy, Teloriel had another errand to attend to, and he left me in the care of the class. The teachers instructed their students to make their own observations about me, and, well, things got out of hand. The student who had come up with the idea to have me there got too close, and though I planned to just ignore whatever happened, Rizman could not stand by, and a sort of game began where I was the bait. I was shoved round and round while Rizman tried to reach me, his way barred by the other students. The game ended abruptly when I found myself impaled by a sword. Another student, who had it in for Rizman, thought it might be funny to take away the fairy he so obviously cared about. Rizman killed the drow who wounded me, and then found himself in a precarious situation. I was dying in his arms, and he was now a murderer. It was a sort of wake-up call to him, and he realized he didn't want to live the life of a drow anymore. So he took my body and fled. He wouldn't have made it if not for a surprising turn of events. Torafane, one of his instructors, actually helped Rizman to escape. He pointed to a secret way out of the cavern, and Rizman got me to safety. Before I lost consciousness, I confessed my real name, Mazira, to Rizman. I should be dead. I lost so much blood. The wound was lethal. Even though Rizman waited and waited for me to die, I never did. Instead, strange things happened. A crack appeared in the stone wall, dripping fresh water. There were magic berries growing inside, berries with a small amount of healing properties. They sustained us both for several days. When the berries stopped appearing, Rizman was forced to return to Menzo Berenzen for supplies. He chose to seek the aid of a mercenary band called Bregan de Arth. There he met Kalos and Pearl, acting leaders of the organization. They agreed to aid him if he would do a job for them first, an assassination. Unbeknownst to Rizman, Drader, the student he crippled during his escape from Melee Mag there by slicing off his hand, had already joined the mercenaries. To Rizman, this job was nothing. He went on the mission and killed the priestess as instructed, only to realize after how terrible it was to kill for coin. When the mercenaries tried to recruit him permanently, he refused, took his supplies, and returned to me. For the first time in over a 10-day, I awoke. I had no idea where I was or what was happening, and I didn't know how to treat Risman after so long apart. I remembered nothing of almost dying. When Risman told me his plan to set me free and take me back to the surface, all I could think about was that little girl Teloriel would replace me with. I absolutely panicked and begged Risman to take me back. He refused, and after some back and forth, he convinced me a deity had intervened in my life. While he'd been living off magic berries, I'd been dreaming of conjuring those same berries. Risman convinced me this meant a god had saved us, and I had to go along with destiny. So, I guess I believe him. But I made him promise we would kill Teloriel before we left the Underdark. He agreed, and he also promised to never hurt me again. I don't know if I believe that second promise. But for now, we travel together through the Underdark, doing our best to survive. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Forsaken by Shadows, written and produced by me, Sarah Danielle. As always, the music and ambiance for this episode is provided by Tabletop Audio. And of course, this story is unofficial fan content not endorsed by Wizards of the Coast. I hope this short recap refreshed your memory on the story thus far, and if you're joining us for the first time in Season 2, know that I am deeply grateful that you are here. I hope you will stay with us and follow along with Risman and Mazira's journey through the Underdark. And remember, though the caverns be dark and the days seem endless, light is coming for you.